Federal Parliament is in its final week of the year and possibly of this government, with a rush to push through legislation from social media bans to new housing policies. The ASX and the Commonwealth Bank hit new records, and why the price of a cup of coffee is set to soar. All that and plenty more. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Tuesday, the 26th of November 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, the main story this morning, it is a very, very busy final week of the sitting year for Federal Parliament, with the bill to ban social media for under 16-year-olds really front and centre, amid, though, 76 unpassed bills. So there's a bit to get through.
They will be busy. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was talking about the social media ban yesterday. He said world leaders at G20, which he was at last week, said that they're watching Australia's efforts to limit online platforms for under 16-year-olds. He hopes the bill, which has bipartisan support, passes this week. There was a very hastily convened parliamentary committee meeting on it yesterday. What came out was that not everyone agrees with the idea, including groups like youth mental health organisations. So that's certainly worth listening to those people. No one seems to be sure how it will work, and they all agree that it is being rushed through. Labor's also made a final push for other parties to support its Help to Buy housing policy. It's going to hit the Senate today. This will see the government co-purchase homes with about 40,000 first home buyers. Now, it is likely to fail and provide a trigger for a double dissolution election. The other part of the housing platform is the Build to Rent legislation. It's also being introduced this week, provides new tax incentives for investors. Both pieces of legislation, Help to Buy and Build to Rent, were election promises. Both are likely to fail. Resources Minister Madeleine King yesterday urged the opposition, Greens and crossbenchers to support tax cut incentives for net zero industries. The legislation is for production tax credits totalling $13.7 billion. Opposition leader Peter Dutton has previously called this one corporate welfare for billionaires. There will be some good news for the government, though, Michael. It's likely to get through new legislation on aged care and political donations. It also may pass a bill for free TAFE. However, I don't think it's going to get through that 76 unpassed bill backlog.
You've covered a lot of federal politics in your time, Sean.
Yes.
How does a government, and this is fairly consistent, right? There's always like this mad rush right at the end. How do they get kind of so much trying to jam it all into one week? It's got all the hallmarks, right, of a student who's kind of left their assignments and everything's right till the very last minute. How do we kind of get into this position? Is it just bad time management through the rest of the year?
Look, I mean, a lot of it is deliberate. There is a bunch of bills that come through and good ideas, not time to debate them. No one really thinks they're going to pass a bunch of these bills. Things like the social media ban is an interesting one because you have bipartisan support, so obviously that's going to go through, though yesterday we saw this sort of group saying, let's not rush this one. And then other things like the housing legislation, they're just never going to make it. And they're just political points. Allows for a double dissolution election, off we go. So maybe it's a little bit last minute rush. I think there is something in that, but a lot of it is politicking as well, Michael.
Oh, okay. So really they don't just necessarily, all sides don't just have our kind of best interest necessarily at heart here.
Oh, Michael, please.
Of course I'm such an idealist here, Sean.
You are.
I'm such an idealist. But really, kind of away from legislation, the government is feeling the heat at the moment on everything from the cost of living crisis through to international diplomacy.
So polling hasn't been that good for the government, and given the mandate it got almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, it's surprising, and I know within the Labor Party it's a bit of a surprise how poorly they are polling at this point. It's quite possible that this will be the final sitting week of this parliament. We could end up with an election early next year. We do need an election by the middle of May next year. Now, there will be a budget update next month. I suppose the cost of living crisis is the thing that is hurting the government most. According to the polls, the government would love to see a rate cut by May next year. That is now considered highly unlikely. Other issues are plenty. The big one at the moment, this is what's happening with the International Criminal Court issuing arrest warrants for Israel, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Foreign Minister Penny Wong yesterday indicated that he would be arrested if he came to Australia. Now, this is quite a stoush. The US has just totally disagreed with the International Criminal Court. Others, like Ireland and the Netherlands, have basically said, yeah, he will be arrested. We haven't quite said that, but we've indicated that he will. Another interesting one running around at the moment is the idea of banning gambling advertising. Independent MP David Pocock, a senator from Canberra, yesterday said Labor is gutless for not progressing with a ban on gambling advertising, having previously said they'll put forward a proposal by the end of this year.
A lot of politics to kick us off there today, Sean. Let's move to markets, shall we? Another day, another record for the local share market, with the S&P ASX 200 hitting a new intraday high and a closing high as well. Finally cracked that 8,400 mark for the close.
Sure did. So the record high was hit late yesterday morning, 8,458.9 points. By the end of the day, the market was up 0.3% to 8,417 points. As you said, a new closing high. The interest rate sensitive sectors did best. The real estate investment trusts, healthcare and consumer discretionary. That was on the back of stuff out of Wall Street. We'll mention that in a moment. Iron ore prices pushed up the big miners. Higher energy prices pushed up oil and gas stocks. The bank stocks, by the end of the day, they're actually lower. And that's after the regulator, the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, came out and said it would maintain mortgage lending buffers. It's worried about high debt levels, cost of living pressures, and a pickup in credit growth. Basically, that's all about how much people need to be able to repay when going for a home loan. So home loans at 7%, you've got to be able to repay 10%. That 3% is a home loan. Going to keep with that. Banks ended down, but not before Commonwealth Bank once again did what it's been doing non-stop, hitting a new record high. So on opening yesterday, hit $160.27 a share. First time above $160. I said $1.60. It's $160.27 a share.
Isn't it quite extraordinary where it's at the moment, considering kind of when it was at $140 and $130? There were plenty of analysts saying, no, it's too expensive, and it just keeps going.
It's too expensive to get to $100.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It's total re-rating. So sometimes CSL has had a D-rating, whereas people thought it was the best thing ever. In the last 12 months, it's really fallen and it's sort of been derated. Commonwealth Bank's been re-rated. So, where it sits in the kind of spectrum, it's gone up. Did you go up the spectrum? I don't know. Further up the tree? I don't know. My mixed metaphors are ridiculous. But people think it's fundamentally worth more than what when they thought it was fundamentally worth 12 months ago.
Okay, so it's essentially a reset. It's a reset of what they believe and understand the stocks to be worth.
Yeah, okay. Definitely. A couple of other quick ones. Payments and Data Infrastructure Group, Cuscal, hit the market yesterday. Initially came on at $2.50, ended about $2.35 or something rather, so it was down a bit. And Pro Medicus came out. It had its AGM yesterday, best performing large cap this year. It was only mid cap. By the end of this year, it's now a large cap because it has done so well, considering a share split, so retail investors can still buy in.
And just quickly, Sean, global markets are fixated at the moment on Donald Trump's nomination of hedge fund founder Scott Bessent as Treasury Secretary.
A big part of the reason why our local share market did so well yesterday. They're fixated on him kind of for good reasons, though. He actually understands the job, people think, which says a lot about some of the other nominations. 62-year-old has been publicly supportive of tariffs, but he's also suggested the threats by Donald Trump on tariffs are a negotiating strategy aimed at extracting concessions. In fact, he told the Financial Times about a month ago that he thought Donald Trump was a free trader. That kind of took pressure off market interest rates in the US dollars. That's why some of those the interest rate sensitive stocks in Australia did well yesterday. Otherwise, Bitcoin hasn't quite hit $100,000 a unit, and the Aussie dollar's buying just over 65 US cents.
A very quick mention of our interview coming up after the show today. Something completely different today, Sean. We have a special guest appearance by Tim Minchin, who is basically kind of an extraordinary Australian export in terms of singer, songwriter, author. He writes a lot of music and things for shows, stage shows like Matilda. He's got another one for Groundhog Day at the moment. Absolutely just going nuts particularly overseas. He is a huge success, but he's talking to Adam Lang, our Fear and Greed colleague today, about Oz Music T-shirt Day, which is coming up on Thursday, basically about why it's important to help kind of grassroots music in Australia and musicians and people in Australia who are struggling a bit at the moment. It is a great conversation. It's something a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, sure is. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. It's coming up after the show. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles is being sued by his Chief of Staff, Joe Tarnowski, under the Fair Work Act, claiming adverse action in the form of victimisation.
Via her lawyer, Michael Bradley, Ms. Tarnowski claims she raised concerns of bullying from senior members of staff with Mr. Marles, and her treatment as a result of that was adverse action, which is unlawful. In a statement, she said, 6 weeks ago, I spoke out publicly to reveal what was happening to me behind closed doors. As far as I know, there has been no investigation into the behaviours I reported nor regarding the actions taken by the Deputy Prime Minister against me. Not a single member of the government has reached out to check on my well-being. 3 weeks ago, I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister asking him to intervene and hold the Deputy Prime Minister to account for the way I had been treated. The Prime Minister has not responded. She said the government needs to learn from her experience. Ms. Tarnowski is still employed as Marles' Chief of Staff, but is on miscellaneous leave.
Private equity group Pacific Equity Partners has made a bid for SG Fleet Group, sending its share price up more than 20%.
The $1.2 billion bid provides an exit for the majority shareholder, South African-based Super Group. It has about 53% of the company. Yesterday, the board said it's in the best interests to engage with PEP, Pacific Equity Partners, and granted them exclusive due diligence. A binding offer is expected some point after this week.
I love this next story, Sean. This is a cracker. Air New Zealand is about to retrofit its wide-body planes, adding more premium economy and business class seats. It is such a big job to go and kind of just and basically gut these aircraft and just do it all over again. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So we're talking about Dreamliners here, and it decreases the capacity, but adds about 30% more non-economy seats. And at the moment, Qantas has done this and done really well out of it. It's a bit of a hedge against weak domestic and corporate travel markets, going more up market. In Air New Zealand's case, it also hopes to boost cargo exports to help the bottom line. Air New Zealand, which is listed in New Zealand and here on the ASX, looks like it will finally turn a profit in the current 6 months. It's had a bit of a shocker. It was up 2% yesterday, but it's down more than 15% this year. Compare that to Qantas, it's up 67% this year, trading near record levels.
Southern Cross Austereo held its annual general meeting yesterday, and investors delivered a first strike against executive pay.
It's a tough market, and Southern Cross Austereo is down 43% this year. That's a very tough market. It's the group with Triple M hit radio networks, as well as Listener app and a network of regional TV stations. Now, a bunch of its big shareholders voted against the remuneration report. One of those big shareholders is ARN Media, who last year tried to buy SCA. ARN includes KISS FM and Pure Gold. SCA, Southern Cross, said it's in active negotiations to offload its TV stations. It has nearly 100 of them. Chair John Kelly said going forward for SCA, it's all about audio.
Oh. Thousands of New South Wales. So I get excited as soon as anyone talks about audio. As being
we
the future.
Love audio on this show. Yeah.
Because audio is the future, right? That's what we always say here.
Yeah.
Thousands of New South Wales homes and businesses are facing the threat of rolling blackouts tomorrow on the back of unexpected outages at coal power units, along with, of course, very hot weather.
Yeah. Initially, the Australian Energy Market Operator said that 1.73 gigawatts could be lost by mid-afternoon tomorrow. That's enough energy to power about 1.5 million homes. Later, it cut that to about 20% of that level. Still, 300,000 homes. It's the biggest test for the state since the closure of AGL Energy's Liddell coal power station in April last year. According to the Fin Review, there are disruptions or outages all across the East Coast, or down the East Coast, I suppose. AGL Energy's Bayswater generator in the Hunter Valley, for example, Origin Energy's Raring plant, Delta's Vales Point station in New South Wales, and AGL's Loy Yang power station in Victoria. There's also other units down for planned maintenance, just a bunch of events that are coming together whilst this really hot weather's happening.
Mention this next one at the top of the show, Sean. Bad news for coffee drinkers. Prices are soaring on the back of expected poor crops in Vietnam and Brazil.
And they're the biggest coffee producers. Now, we've spoken a bit about coffee on this show. It's like, I reckon it's one of our favourite commodities. Would you agree?
It is. Yeah, up there with orange juice.
Yeah, well, no, no. Coffee's way in front.
Oh, no, it is much, much, much better. But in terms of interesting commodities to talk about, I would say orange juice is up there too, right?
Really?
Sorry, just go on. Just
well,
save me
do you know
from
how many
myself.
cups of coffee? Do you know how many cups of coffee is consumed every day?
Globally?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to round it up and say a lot.
Yeah, 2 million, according to the British Coffee Association. Mind you, 2 million is not that many. Maybe that's only in Britain.
Maybe that must just be in Britain.
I might have to go and check. Yeah, that must be Britain. Yeah. The biggest drinkers are actually the Dutch and the Finnish. There you go.
I would have thought it would be. Okay, this is at risk of stereotyping here, but I would have thought it would be the Italians.
Yeah.
And where does Australia fit in this? This is just all an outrage. This whole story.
Anyway. So production last season was 164 million 60-kilo bags. So you talk about 164 million bags. That's how you measure it. But they're 60-kilo bags. So that's a lot of coffee.
Yes.
Arabica futures are now at a 13-year high. So you have sort of Robusta, isn't it, and Arabica are the two main types. 60%. Arabica's up 60% this year. That's what most Australians drink, Arabica coffee. Mm-hmm. Now, some of the big buyers like Nestle have warned that it's going to up prices. The reason for all this is unfavourable weather in Brazil, but also people are now consuming drinks that require more coffee. So, forget the single shot flat white. People are going the double shot with this, that and the other. And so the actual demand is so much higher because the cups of coffee have got more caffeine in them. There you go. Anyway, bad news. We're all going to have to pay more for it soon because the price of the raw material, coffee beans, has gone through the roof.
Do you know how much is consumed in Italy?
Sure. No, you've obviously been Googling.
I have. I was listening with one ear and Googling with the other. Yeah. On average, Italians drink 4 coffees a day. And what they will typically do is have kind of smaller quantities. So, I mean, you're not having kind of like 200 mils of milk with it. You're just having kind of your espresso shot, essentially.
Right.
There you go. Fascinating fact, right?
That is a totally fascinating fact.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway, just thought I'd share that with you. Turning to international news now, a senior Russian general has been sacked for faking reports of battlefield successes in Ukraine. This is according to Russian media and war bloggers.
So Colonel General Gennady Anashkin was the commander of the Russian army's southern group, which had been fighting around Seversk in eastern Ukraine. A prominent pro-Kremlin Telegram channel called Rybar, R-Y-B-A-R, is saying that as well as providing inaccurate reports, Anashkin had thrown poorly prepared and ill-equipped units into battle, unnecessarily killing hundreds of men for little apparent tactical gain, according to the Telegraph of London. Neither the Kremlin nor the Russian army has officially confirmed the sacking, although Russian state outlet RBK reported that a source in the Russian Ministry of Defense acknowledged Anashkin's dismissal, but claimed it was due to a planned rotation.
Last one, Sean. The Times of Israel has reported that Israel has agreed in principle to a US-backed ceasefire with Hezbollah in what would have to be a major breakthrough in the war.
The newspaper cited multiple reports of high-level consultations involving Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It came after Israel was hit by rocket fire from Lebanon and the Israeli Air Force carried out multiple strikes on Hezbollah sites in Beirut. The proposed ceasefire aims to restore UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which ended the 2006 Hezbollah-Israel war. It would require Hezbollah to pull its fighters back about 30 kilometres from the Israeli border and the Lebanese army to deploy in the buffer zone, according to the Fin Review.
All right. Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. Our guest today is Australian entertainer Tim Minchin. That's coming up in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is also where you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter out tomorrow. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Tuesday, the 26th of November 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.